The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
The National Council for Occupational Safety and Health gearing up for Workers' Memorial Day. What Chicago teachers are doing for May Day, and today on the show, the Ohio Federation of Teachers and the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of TV Radio Artists. Welcome to the Wednesday, April 22nd edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Melissa Cropper will be our first guest on the show today. She is president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers, a website you want to go to, oh.aft.org. This week is National Library Week, and Melissa, being a librarian from the get-go, is very excited to talk about it and to talk about library organizing. That's right. Library workers in Central Ohio have made huge gains in the past 5 years by organizing unions and winning improvements in strong union contracts. She's going to run down what happened here in the last 5 years. We're also going to talk about higher education, the American Federation of Teachers, that's the parent union of the OFT, and the university professors. They have joined together to launch a new comprehensive national policy platform ahead of the midterms to counter what the current administration, the Trump administration, is doing, attacking higher education. We'll get into that. And lastly, educators at the Columbus College of Art and Design and Menlo Park Academy are celebrating. Well, at Menlo Park, educators ratified their first contract after nearly 4 years of bargaining. And at the Columbus College of Art and Design, faculty have reached a tentative agreement after 2 years of bargaining. She's going to explain why it took so long and how difficult it was for the workers at those two institutions. So Melissa will be our first guest. Then we're going to go to Kerri Wood Einertson on the West Coast. She is the Executive Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for my union. That would be SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of TV Radio Artists. She's going to talk about the ongoing industry conversations around film production policies in Los Angeles, including the California Film and Television Tax Credit Program. Now, last month, Governor Gavin Newsom announced a significant expansion of that program, awarding credits to 16 television projects. For the first time in the program's history, the state included animated and competition series in the selection. And these projects are expected to generate $1.3 billion in economic activity across the state of California. Good news, good news. And Kerri Wood is going to talk all about that and more as our second guest right here on America's Workforce. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, $38 billion of assets under advisement. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. The National Council for Occupational Safety and Health, better known as National COSH, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting safe, healthy, and just working conditions, came out today with their Dirty Dozen. They do this every year right before Workers' Memorial Day, which is next Tuesday. And Jessica Martinez, who we featured on the show many, many times, is the executive director. And she came out with 6 individuals. Some of them had their names withheld because they're so scared. They're so scared of speaking out. One of them, by the name of Gustavo Reyes Gonzalez, former engineered stone cutter living with silicosis. He was at the conference. There was a catfish processing worker, name withheld, talking about what he had to do on the job. One was an auto manufacturing worker, actually two auto manufacturing workers, a food processing worker, and a residential construction worker, all withholding their names because they fear for their jobs. You know, in 2024, which was 2 years ago, more than 5,000 workers were killed on the job. And at the same time, OSHA has approximately 1,850 inspectors for over 130 million workers, about one inspector for every 70,000 workers. At this pace, it would take more than 150 years to inspect every workplace once. Federal workplace safety enforcement has declined sharply, with health and safety penalties dropping by nearly 45% last year. And Jessica Martinez, again, the executive director of National COSH, said, "This is not inevitable. It is the result of corporate decisions and weak enforcement. Workers are speaking out to demand accountability and protections that save lives." That's what this is all about. The Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago Public Schools have reached a compromise agreement to designate May 1st as a day of civic engagement. While classes will remain in session, the district has agreed not to retaliate against students and staff who take part in May Day actions. Moreover, the Chicago Public Schools will provide buses and bagged lunches for 100 schools to facilitate student participation in a May Day rally in Union Park. Over several weeks of negotiations, the union had advocated for the school district to cancel classes on International Workers' Day so that its members could take part in workers' rights protests, but the school system continually opposed the move. Enter Chicago's mayor, Brandon Johnson, a former teacher and organizer for the CTU. Well, he supported the union's original May Day proposal and was credited by the union with helping to develop the compromise plan. Once again, good example. You get union people in office, good things happen. I want to get back to Workers' Memorial Day. We've done a series which started on Monday this week, and we've moved into the 20th century now, and into one of the most well-known workplace disasters in American history. I'm talking about a factory fire in New York City going back to 1911 that shocked the nation and reshaped labor law forever. I want to thank our friends at the National Labor Office at Blue Cross Blue Shield for this segment. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families and for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. March 25th, 1911. 146 workers, most of them young immigrant women, died in a fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City. They were not killed by the flames alone. They were killed by locked exit doors, by owners who valued their product over the lives of the people making it. Those women had no way out, and when the country saw what had happened, something shifted. New York passed more than 30 new labor laws in the years that followed. The tragedy laid the groundwork for fire codes, workplace inspections, and worker protections that Americans rely on to this day. We remember them not just as victims, but as the reason so many workers today come home safe at the end of a shift. So their lives were not lost in vain. but they should never have been lost at all. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Melissa Cropper, president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to Central Ohio and join Melissa Cropper each and every month. We check in with her and talk about what's going on with the Ohio Federation of Teachers, which there's always something going on. Melissa, welcome back to the show. The website, by the way, is oh.aft.org. And let's start off with this week being National Library Week, which obviously hits you personally since you come.
Yes.
Yay! You come from that sector. I know you're excited about this. You know, it's always good to talk about something good happening because there's a lot of bad things happening. And, you know, it's so important that we support our libraries. I'm just going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Like you said, this is personal to me. I started working in a public library myself when I was a freshman in high school, continued all the way through my sophomore year of college, and then ended up getting an endorsement on my teaching certificate to be a school librarian. I did that for 14 years before doing this job. So love libraries. And we've been organizing libraries. That makes it extra special to us to celebrate National Library Week. And we're celebrating it by celebrating the victories that we've seen in our contracts at libraries in Central Ohio. You know, most recently, we organized Delaware County Library. That's our most recent one that won their election and got a contract. But actually Upper Arlington just got one. So we now have, Upper Arlington, Delaware County, Grandview, Worthington, Pickerington, and actually just got a contract the other night in Athens County Public Library too, so a little bit outside of Central Ohio, and we're working in Columbus Metropolitan Library. And we're seeing great victories in these first contracts. I mean, not only are they getting significant pay increases, but they're also getting things in a first contract, mind you, getting things like paid assault leave, increased paid time off, paid parental leave, which is huge, tuition reimbursement, and then the typical things like, the binding grievance and arbitration process, et cetera. So very, very successful, not only with organizing our libraries and getting a union there, but getting really, really strong first contracts in these libraries.
When you talk about library workers, I don't think they were making much money. And you mentioned significant pay increases. Can you show me from, where they were to, I mean, this is general now, where they were, where they are now today because of union activity?
Right. Let me just put it this way. Before we started organizing libraries in Ohio, Columbus Metropolitan Library is kind of held as a standard for the highest pay in the area. And now the libraries that we've organized, like Worthington Public Library, now has higher pay scale than what Columbus Metropolitan Library has. So we're seeing 9% raises, et cetera, across in several of these libraries. Like you say, going from being low paid workers to being competitive pay across the library field.
Now, you mentioned the Columbus Metropolitan Library. That union election will be held, I guess in middle to late June. And
Yes.
I'm hearing some pushback on that one from management.
Well, it's very very disappointing in a few ways. One, the fact that we don't have an election until the middle of June. These people filed for an election in December. In December, they have to wait 6 months because of slowness at SERB to get a union election, which is just unheard of. Our other libraries took 3 months. Delaware took 5 months, and now, Columbus Metropolitan has taken 6 months, and that's a long time to keep people engaged around an election, especially when you have turnover in workplaces. To try to keep people fired up and ready to vote, you have to wait 6 months to vote. So that's a problem that we have with SERB in the state, and a problem that needs to be corrected. When you've got over 60% of workers who say they want a union contract, they shouldn't have to wait 6 months for that to happen. In the meantime, that certainly gives administration plenty of opportunities to do their union busting. So again, disappointing. We were hopeful that Columbus Metropolitan Library maybe would not actively engage in union busting and would remain neutral throughout the process. But they've been putting out flyers that are very selective in the information that they share, and particularly one they put out about union dues, and a lot of misinformation in there about union dues, and also minimizing the effect that union contracts have had in other libraries in the county. So again, I just rattled off a whole list of things that people have wanted in a union contract, but they neglect to mention that in their flyers to workers. And then on their intranet system, where the workers get information, workplace information, every email they open, et cetera, has a banner at the top of it that says union education. And when you click on it, it goes to all the administration side of information about why basically you shouldn't join a union. We're combating this. And like I said, I have to do this for 6 months, combat this kind of information. Not quite 6 months now, but we've been battling it since, end of December, keeping people informed on what the real truth is about being a union member, why 60% of the people said that they wanted to be a union member, and keeping people engaged and excited so when this union election comes in the middle of June, they're ready to vote yes.
All right, let's switch to a higher education. In the past, I want to say 5-10 years, we've seen a lot of states and their respective governors, attack higher education. Now we're seeing it nationally. I understand the American Federation of Teachers and the professors, the union professors, have launched a new national policy reform plan ahead of the midterms. Explain what's going on here.
Correct. So at the national level, AFT and AAUP, which is the American Association of University Professors, have merged. So working together as one union on higher education issues. And as you indicated, not only at the state level, but at the federal level, we're seeing severe attacks on higher education. Closing down of programs, trying to put pressure on what can and cannot be taught in a classroom, reducing funds for federal spending on research projects, et cetera. The list just goes on and on. So we're trying to make a strong stand, public stand about what our vision is for higher education, and really doubling down that, public higher education, you should be able to come out with a degree being debt-free, and that the workers within a higher education setting should be considered dignified work with job security, and that we're really honoring academic freedom. that professors, have the right to teach what they believe is the right thing to teach in the classroom, that they have shared governance, so they have a voice in what happens on the campus setting, and just reminding people that our public institutions are a public good, and that higher education is a quality thing that we still want to encourage people to have. In this era of supporting career tech education, which we firmly, firmly support, seeing that as a pathway to a post-secondary degree rather than as an alternative to a post-secondary degree, but how can the two enhance each other? So really the whole idea is just to reinforce the necessity of our higher ed institutes and to double down on supporting our faculty who works there instead of, again, minimizing their voice and taking away their autonomy.
That new framework is titled A Blueprint for Strengthening and Transforming Higher Education. All right, Melissa, one more here. And this is good news. It took some time. We're working on a contract for the Columbus College and Art Design, where they have reached a tentative agreement on 2 years of bargaining, and also educators ratifying their first contract at Menlo Park. Give me some details on this.
These are both significant. I'm going to start with Menlo Park. It took us 4 years to get a contract at Menlo Park. Had almost a complete turnover of staff from the people who started the organizing campaign and who's still left there now. They hung in there. Each new group of teachers who came in were still committed to, they wanted to have a union there, and really fought against administration and hung tough and were able to get a contract. And one of the biggest things in this contract is something that a lot of workers who are already in a union take for granted, but that is basically having the right to a grievance procedure. They recently got rid of a teacher there without any kind of having to follow any kind of procedure at all. I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin when people said, we have to get a contract. We have to, protect our rights to due process. So that was really a huge win there, as well as solidifying some pay scale issues, et cetera. And then Columbus College of Art and Design, I think the one thing I want to hold up there is, to my knowledge, I don't know this for 100% accuracy, but in Ohio, in the public sector, adjunct professors do not have any collective bargaining rights. But CCAD is private sector, so I think these are probably the first adjunct professors in the state who have collective bargaining rights. If there are other ones, I don't know of them, but to get collective bargaining rights for adjunct professors is huge in Ohio.
Yeah. Sadly, it took such a long time for this to happen. And we say this on the show so many times, justice delayed is justice denied. And you mentioned the turnover. 4 years in that one situation, 4 years to secure, 4 years of bargaining to get to where we are today.
That's where we are now, yes. And since then, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, also within the past few days, we were able to get tentative agreement on a contract at Athens Public Library. So it's been a significant couple of weeks for us here at AFT on contracts that we have been working on that we've finally been able to nail down and get. And we're hopeful that by the time we do this show again, that we will have 2 more completed.
Very good. All right, we'll leave it on that note. Melissa Cropper, president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers. You can find them online at oh.aft.org. Also on Facebook, OFT Union. Real simple. You take care, and we'll talk to you next month, all right?
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to check in with the Executive Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for my union, and that would be SAG-AFTRA. Her story right after this on America's Workforce.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LIUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. We are now celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Blues, developing the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families. Working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. Learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to the West Coast. And we're going to feature my union today. That would be the Screen Actors Guild, the American Federation of TV Radio Artists. SAG-AFTRA.org is a website. Joining us as our featured guest is Kerri Wood Einertson. And Kerri serves as Executive Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy. We got lots to talk about because we need help in the film industry, film and movie industry, and it's happening. It's happening, which is a good thing. Kerri, welcome to America's Workforce. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get into the subject matter, I always like to talk to a new guest, get a little background on who they are, their journey in life, and I appreciate you taking some time on the podcast today. I know you're busy dealing with government affairs and public policy, but a little bit of your background and how you arrived at that position. Go ahead, Kerri.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I've been here at SAG-AFTRA for about 13 years. I started after the merger of SAG and AFTRA, and I've kind of moved up and developed in the government affairs space here at the union. Prior to that, I have worked on Capitol Hill in politics, born and raised in Los Angeles, and very, very passionate about our members and what I do.
Well, at least you got away from some of the politics, but politics is ingrained everywhere, no matter where you go. I truly understand that. So I appreciate you coming to the table today. So talk to me about the industry itself. And I've had several conversations with guests with similar backgrounds to yourself. You know, the film credits, we have them, we base this show in the state of Ohio. We have them here. And it's generated a significant amount of production here. But give me a little bit of history of that and how they work and their effectiveness.
Sure. Well, we work, on production tax incentives around the country. It's very important for job creation for our members. That's kind of our biggest priority. Here in California, as you know, we were just able to double our incentive. And that was a huge, huge victory, huge win. The unions all worked together in partnership to get that over the line. We hope to continue it, frankly. We hope to enhance it going forward with the next governor. They're job creators, and it's not just for our industry. There's ancillary businesses that benefit from this, particularly here, in Los Angeles, where the industry is kind of the epicenter of the economy. But this is also true around the country, where when you have a show, a commercial, a TV show, or movie filming in an area, the local business is also largely benefit from that. But we want our members working everywhere, and that's why we support these initiatives.
Kerri, let me ask you this. What would happen to the industry if we didn't provide these tax credits? Would it be pretty much devastated, or maybe they would go to another country that's providing them? What do we know about that?
That's a really good question. I don't know the exact answer to that, but what I will say is other countries are offering really lucrative incentives right now. And if nobody in the United States offered that, I think everything would go abroad, and that's kind of what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to keep work here in the U.S.
Well, let's talk about what happened on March 18th, and that's the date that Governor Gavin Newsom announced a very, very significant expansion of the California Film and Television Tax Credit Program, awarding credits to 16 television projects. I understand this is a first time in the program's history. The state actually included animated and competition series in the selection. I'd like you to elaborate on that. And also talk to me about how difficult that was. Obviously, you got some expertise in politicking, making sure you get the right things to the right finish line here. This took some work, I would imagine. Maybe you could speak to that first.
Oh, sure. So I will tell you, in addition to my role with SAG-AFTRA, I also am on the board of the California Film Commission. So I am very familiar with that situation. And look, we're just trying to include everybody at the table in this tax credit, right? There's people that work in animation. There's people that work on game shows, for example, competition shows. And again, the other unions are heavily involved in this as well, with the crew and it was just about really creating an ecosystem in LA, an all-inclusive incentive. It's a big win for us because it's including more jobs, more people, more union members that can benefit from the incentive.
I'm looking at a generation of $1.3 billion in economic activity across California. Now, how did we arrive at that number? Maybe you could spell out, you mentioned more jobs and all that. Maybe perhaps you can give us a little breakdown of what we're looking at.
Sure. I mean, I'll do my best on that. I think the way they arrived at that is, as I mentioned before, considering all of the ancillary businesses that are affected by this, and the community-based businesses, the local economies. You can go all the way from dry cleaners to restaurants to hotels. I mean, we just had a lot of economists look at this, figure that out. And I think the governor's office and the California Film Commission had a lot of, economic experts reading into the precise, benefits. And that's kind of how that was arrived. I wasn't personally involved in getting to that number, but that's what they were looking at.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at a couple of statistics here. 1,200 filming days. That's an additional opportunities for 4,500 cast and crew members, and projects expect to employ more than 50,000 background performers. Yeah, we got some big numbers here from what I'm reading. Is this happening right now? Is there a certain time? I mean, you just signed this in March.
Mm-hmm.
When is it rolled out, or is it happening already?
I think it's already happening. The incentive took place, was signed last July. The $750 million was signed last July. And we saw pretty much immediate benefits. I mean, look, we always want more. We always want more jobs creation. But I think, it's already happening. We've got Baywatch shooting in LA. So it's going on right now in real time.
Now, let's talk about the process of getting this done. I understand that Noah Wiley, who's, he's the hot shot right now with The Pit. Great show. Oh, my God. We can't wait. We can't wait for the next episode to come out. It's getting a lot of PR, good PR, I might add. Now, I understand he kind of played a role in some of this, and maybe he was not alone, I would assume.
No, Noah's been great. He was at the signing of the tax credit expansion in July that I mentioned with Governor Newsom. As a main star on a show that shoots in LA and that did receive the tax credit, he was just a really important voice in that process, and he's been really supportive. Lives in LA, works in LA, wants to stay in LA, wants to keep working in LA, and I think so many others feel exactly the same as he does. He's just been fortunate to be on a top show that received the credit, and we want more and more of that.
So how long do these credits go? I'm just wondering, you obviously you worked hard to get from point A to point B. I'm concerned about point C, D, E, and F here because eventually, this is going to have to take another look at this, maybe add some more money. Yeah, and the politics are going to play into all that, as you well know. But I'm just wondering, where do we go from here? That's my question.
Sure. No, I see it as honestly, it is a constant evolution with this tax credit program. I think, there is a sunset. I think it's going for 4 years now. But look, we can go in and we can make enhancements the entire time. So it's not like set in stone. And that's kind of what I mentioned earlier, where we're going to get a new governor in California. I think it's going to be really important to our coalition of unions and to SAG-AFTRA to make sure the program stays extremely solid and gets enhanced. There's some things that we can do to make it even better. And I think that's what our collective is looking at. So yeah, there is a date. I think it's a sunset in 4 years, the current program. But again, we will be continually monitoring it and trying to make it better during the entire time that the program is in place, and then work to obviously expand it.
The number two, we're talking $1.3 billion. And as far as the tax credits go, I'm sure, well, you always got to shoot for the sun. Maybe you'll get the stars. I would imagine, you'll be looking at that down the road. I want to talk about the mayor of Los Angeles here. From what I understand, we're talking Karen Bass. She issued an executive order to lower costs, streamline on-location filming processes, and increase access to city locations like, and there's a couple here that I'm reading, the Los Angeles City Library, the Port of LA, the Griffith Observatory. Can you give me a little background on that? This is obviously something else that's being worked on. Can you speak to what happened here?
Sure. So yes, Mayor Bass signaled, and this was really important because there were things happening in LA that I think were out of kilter with like the fees charged at these locations, like for example, Griffith Park and the Central Library. What she's doing is rolling those back. So we're back to, in terms of the observatory and the library, we're back to fees that were at around 2008 levels, which is where we should be, meaning it's easier to shoot there. It's cheaper to shoot there. She's been focusing, and the city council, the entire city council has been supportive. The permitting fees, the permitting process, making sure that is user-friendly, cheaper, streamlined. And we've seen a lot of movement in LA and in the right direction on this, and that's been extremely important for the industry.
I bring that up too. I'm glad she went in that direction because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a perception, oh my God, California is very expensive. Los Angeles is expensive to do a movie. That's why they go to other states. I noticed Georgia picked up, and these are right-to-work states. They're not what you call union-friendly states. I'm just wondering, I'm sure you've had that discussion over there in Los Angeles. Just wondering what you can add to that.
Oh, you mean about the locations?
Yeah, especially there's producers, everybody want, we can do this cheaper. We're hearing that across the board, no matter what industry it is. Let's go to a place where there's cheaper labor costs. You know that argument. I'm just wondering how you handle that.
Of course. No. And I think this was a really important signal from the mayor and from the city council. I think they're doing everything they can that they control, right? The city has control of the fees charged at the library, at the observatory, so I think they're trying to do what they can to cut those costs that have gotten a little, like, I think, for example, the observatory went from like $100,000 fee to shoot there to like 30. So it's still kind of high, but again, that's a huge decrease, right? That's really needed. And everyone loves the observatory and it's beautiful. And so hopefully, moves like that we're trying to make it cheaper to shoot in California. It shouldn't be a hindrance or a roadblock for producers. That's the goal. We want to make it easier and cheaper.
We're speaking with Kerri Wood Einertson, and she is the Executive Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for SAG-AFTRA. SAG-AFTRA.org is the website. So what's the next plan of attack here? You've been doing this job for a number of years, as you indicated. You got a couple of wins here under your belt.
Yep.
Obviously, you want to maintain the progress that you've accomplished here. I salute you on that. What's next on the agenda?
Well, maintain and enhance. The proof is in the pudding, right? So this incentive has already generated a lot of money for the economy, a lot of jobs. We want to keep building upon it, not only maintain, but we want to build upon it. I think we can expand it in really good ways with the new governor, the new administration. I will also add we are working really hard right now on a federal incentive at the federal level, which would be stackable. So it would really help California, because if we got ours to a certain level, you could stack it. New York, New Jersey, who have very competitive incentives right now as well. So we're working in DC with Congress, with the administration, to try to move a federal incentive ASAP to be able to be competitive on the global stage.
Well, I know you got some friends in California. Good luck on that one, because it seems like nothing is getting done in Washington these days. But I will definitely stay on that one. I have to mention this. The great thing, I mentioned Noah Wiley for one, but one thing about SAG-AFTRA, which is my union, you got a lot of people, very visible people, very popular people on your plate for PR, which it's got to make you feel pretty good. And wouldn't you say it makes your job a little bit easier? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Our members are the best. I love working for our members. And look, they all want to work where they live. They want to be with their families. They want to be at their home. They don't want to have to travel to, Budapest to shoot a movie. They want to be here in the U.S. and in their homes, and that's the goal. That's what I'm trying to do. But yes, our members are absolutely terrific, and I'm very lucky.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. Our featured guest today from SAG-AFTRA, Executive Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy, Kerri Wood Einertson. Thank you so much for your time, your dedication, your passion. Please stay in touch. You got a friend here on America's Workforce. We like to have you or any member come on the show, okay?
Thank you so much.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Tomorrow, the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Trust. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.